Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from Bicep. Bicep is the duo of Andrew Ferguson and Matthew McBriar. Just like with Oliver, I looked into these guys in the hopes of covering more debut albums from acts I've never heard of off of the iTunes featured banner, and as I'm slowly starting to realize, you don't typically end up on that banner if you're a complete nobody. While this album is in fact their first full-length project, these guys have been around since 2009, running a music blog called Feel My Bicep, which I guess is the main purpose of was to call attention to lots of long-forgotten releases from the Chicago house, Detroit techno, and Italo disco scenes, among others, while also occasionally releasing an original single or two of their own every now and then. As I said though, I'd never heard of these guys, I don't follow their blog or anything, all I've heard from them to date is this debut album right here. I had no idea what I'd be getting into when I found these guys featured on iTunes. All I saw is that they were signed to Ninja Tune, so it had to at least be interesting, right? I mean, last time I covered a small-time Ninja Tune artist was Four Swords with Compassion, and even though I often came out of that album with Bonobo songs stuck in my head, which is never a good sign, I have heard it a couple of times since that video. It has undoubtedly been growing on me. The question now is, how do these Bicep guys fare? Good. Good. Great, no. But this thing's pretty alright. I will have to admit, on first listen, I wasn't really impressed by this thing. It sounded pretty derivative. Could think of several artists out there with similar sorts of sounds, which these guys are clearly inspired by. Bit of LFO, bit of Jeff Mills, and Underground Resistance, bit of Richie Houghton, but above all, Drexciya. Definitely sound like Drexciya, one of the first names that came to mind when I first put this on. Though being signed to Ninja Tune brought in some of their influence in there too, some vocal manipulations on select tracks, which also call a little bit over to, you know, Bonobo and Odessa and Four Swords and others. So yeah, nothing exactly game-changing to be found here. These guys are obviously major Detroit techno and Chicago house enthusiasts, and this album shows them trying to make stuff like their favorite bands and artists. Though, maybe taking a couple little ideas from their contemporaries to make things a little bit more interesting. And at first this fact kind of disappointed me, as I thought I was going to get something more original, but if that's where their sights lie, then so be it. The question, of course, remains if they at least have the material to support their somewhat lack of originality, and I would have to say yeah. These guys have good melodies, they have good beats, they provide an album that's satisfying and danceable, but also not mindless. It's definitely a fun listen, if nothing else. So, highlights. I like the dramatic vibes of Orca, good way to open up there. The airy vocals and foot-tapping breakbeat of Glue. I like the IDM-esque kites a fair bit as well. Just some really enjoyable melodies there, even if structurally it wasn't exactly mind-blowing. Ayaya had a fairly fresh and unique sound with these airy xylophone-esque synth tones that I feel like I'd be more likely to hear in a video game soundtrack. Really nice one there. Spring was catchy and satisfying to listen to, had some cool vocalizations, though I don't have much else to say besides that. The exact same goes with Rain, though the vocals here reminded me a little of Fortet's Morningside. And Opal, which was admittedly less interesting, had some cool melodies, and again, a fun listen, but that's about it. Air, meanwhile, goes down a more down-tempo route with some great piano sections that I enjoyed quite a lot, definitely one of my favorites. And Aura mirrors our opener pretty well, with some more dramatic vibes and really nice melodies. That being said, not every track on here was a huge winner. The interlude Vespa was okay, didn't really add anything to the experience for me. Drift felt like it was a leftover on Boards of Canada's Tomorrow's Harvest that was fine, but didn't have the same sense of, you know, isolation that album did, felt less unique. And Veil, wanted to like that one more because it has this female vocalist that makes it stand out a bit more, but the track just really isn't that interesting otherwise. But even the less engaging tracks aren't terrible or even skippable, they're all still pretty good. So, overall, I would say this album is pretty solid and good for what it is. The production is spot on. Like I said, there are good melodies, there are good beats, some really great atmosphere. There's nothing I can point to on this album and say, no, you did this completely wrong. It's solid and enjoyable from front to back. That being said, I also don't really see myself returning to this album much in the future. While again, there's nothing that it does wrong, there's quite a lot to enjoy here, it was also not an album that really ever wowed me or stuck out to me as amazing. It's just a pretty good album. It took me like 3 listens for me to really form any sort of opinion on it besides, yep, that was an album that exists. And while I would say I definitely enjoyed it in the end, it's not gonna make my year-end list, or end up on my iPod either. I've just heard similar music like this before that sticks out to me a lot more. Bicep do just enough to give themselves an identity, but just barely. They don't sound exactly like their influences, but I could still pretty easily pinpoint what those influences were. I did have fun with this album though. As I said, the atmosphere is really on point and engaging. While maybe not the most memorable, it's just a pretty solid album that doesn't aim super high, but does what it does well. So I guess I'm overall feeling a solid 7 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it. I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.